Welcome to Directionally Correct, a people's podcast with Cole and Scott. Today's guest, Igor Menezes, Associate Professor at the University of Hull Business School.
Thanks to our sponsors, Pollinode. Harness the full power of organizational network analysis with Pollinode. With one-click data integrations and built-in relationship-based surveys, Pollinode enables people analytics practitioners to move from data to insights faster. To learn more and see why Pollinode is trusted by some of the most innovative companies in the world today, book a demo at pollinode.com/directionally correct. All opinions are our own and do not reflect those of any other organization.
Do you actually use them? Because I sent a kissy face emoji to my director, and he thought that was funny as hell.
What? How do you even react to that?
Well, I send emojis just essentially acknowledge that I got your message and don't have anything actual verbal to say. So like my go-to is the whale like blowing water. That's a good one. If someone like does something for me, like I'll give them the arm, the muscle arm, like you
The
did
flexi
strong.
arm.
Yeah. I'll do a cowboy with the hat, a little smiley face with the cowboy with the hat sometimes. I'll do a dinosaur. Just roll up on a brontosaurus. No reason, no logic.
I mean, I don't even know how to react to someone. It's like, okay, well, fine.
The hole in my game is like the gambit of emojis. Like, get 3 in a row that actually means a sentence.
Igor, do you use emojis to communicate, or are you mostly just a text old school person?
I use some emoji to communicate, yes. Mostly the laugh face. Yeah, never sad face. It's always something that's more related to, I don't know what it is, or just a laugh face.
So would you say you're never sad, or you just never use the sad face?
I think it's a kind of British thing that I learned of not using sad faces or just trying to keep what they say stiff upper lip. So not show emotions or something like this.
You don't want to
Perhaps
put
there's
bad
something
vibes
to it.
out in the universe, right?
No, we can do it. Yeah.
I'll do the praise hands. This little action. That's a
I
good
think the
one.
praise hands is a good one. Yeah, there's another one which is also something like this,
Oh, the
which is
pray.
also good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the pray, yeah. Which has two meanings actually. So it could be someone just praying or someone just saying, okay, just count on me or something like this.
Well,
Yeah.
this is the thing. Like the meanings change so much. We were talking earlier. Like if you give someone a thumbs up, apparently
Yeah.
that's hyper aggressive. That's not good. To Gen
Yeah. It
Z,
depends
they
on the
don't like that.
culture. Do you know that it depends on the culture? Because if you do a thumbs up in Brazil, that says, okay, that's fine, that's okay, you can go ahead. So, but here in the UK, they don't usually do it. So even when you are just driving your car, and if you want to say, okay, thank you, if you say yes, something like this, they look strange to you. But you just have to say something like this, but not thumbs up. So it's a cultural thing, actually.
Even just waving in your car at somebody is like culturally in Texas. If someone does not wave at you after you like let them in, I will fucking murder them. That is an affront. In Seattle,
That's
they
an
don't.
affront. The same here.
Oh yeah, absolutely. People would rather
That-
see you like die in the street than like say thank you to you.
that stiff
Actually,
upper lip.
sometimes you just give it a passage so as you can have a thank you. So you are expecting them to react to your
Yes.
gesture of good gesture. So that's exactly what we do. So if they don't do it, we just look at this way.
I'm
Yeah.
already thinking of like a psychometric emoji assessment that you can build. A culturally appropriate emoji assessment.
I wonder what it looked like. It depends
what
if
would
it
that
comes
look
from
like?
recruitment. If it comes from
Yes,
recruitment
yes.
selection, perhaps the candidates will not give some very good emoji. So they
Like what's the middle
very
finger?
different from thumbs
Yeah,
up.
you don't know. Are you just receiving the emoji? Or are you giving the emoji back? Like the appropriate response to these situations?
It should be a two-way street, isn't it?
Yeah. No words. Culturally insensitive.
Insensitive.
Well, how would one create such an assessment, Igor?
That's a good question. I've seen a few people use emojis like scale response, like it scales, but instead of using text like strongly disagree to strongly agree, they use emojis. But I agree with Scotty. It could be very, very culture sensitive, and I don't think that people would react the same way. That's quite funny. Even the scales and the way that you express yourself, for example, if it's in a Chinese culture, they probably have a different face. So the expression, the facial expression will not be exactly the same as we
Yeah.
express here, for example, in the Western world. So yeah, I don't think that's going to work that way. But it's good that you mentioned this, Cole, because I think that yeah, images are quite good for assessments, but of course, they are, as Scott said, they're culture sensitive. So we need to be very careful of what images you're using and how to select these images connected to cultural aspects, among other things. Yeah,
Well, like Davila says, like the first step is just clearly defining your construct, and you get to move on from there, right?
exactly. Yeah, but even when you define very clearly the specifications matrix in your construct, sometimes when you develop the items are far away from what you have imagined. So, and then what you have to do is to either tweak the items or trying to do something which is much more cross-cultural, or trying to do some cross-cultural studies that you try to see whether other cultures and other contexts would also perceive in the same way. So that would be another option. That's something that we usually do. So we're trying to see my research, for example. What I'm doing, one of my studies is actually trying to work with images. So we developed an image-based personality test, and then we are trying to create a kind of text alignment with the images using AI models, which means that if you want to create an image, let's imagine that you want to create an image of a tree, a very colored tree, which is quite abstract, metaphorical, subjective.
Yeah.
So the question is, how can you associate this image with a text that conveys openness to experience, for example?
So, like,
So is it possible?
what would that look like? So you're presented with an image, and you have to select a written statement that conveys what's going on in the image. Is that what I understand?
Not really, no. No. It's like a standard item. So
Yeah.
we have an item that would go, uh, what picture describes you the best, something like this. And then you have to choose the picture alongside the text that comes with the picture.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
you're not only allowing them to use the pictures, because the problem of using pictures, other companies, for example, do this. So we've seen this in the visual DNA and, for example, the Red Bull Wing Finder. So they also use only images, but the problem that we have seen is that pictures in people interpret pictures in different
Yeah.
ways. So if we take, for example, the first picture of visual DNA, they show, oh, what pictures amaze you or something like this. And then you have the image of a motherboard, someone in space, someone just talk to each other, someone with a remote control. And you say, okay, but what is actually measuring these pictures? Because I could understand and say, okay, I'm going to choose the motherboard because I work with AI models or I come from computer sciences background and that's relevant to me. But not necessarily because I'm expressing my personality traits and my personality based on that specific picture. But if you say, and if you create an item in which the situation would convey an idea of openness to experience, and then you present the tree, and this tree, this colored tree, would be related to something like, I leave my imagination, runs away with me, or something like this.
Yeah.
Then you can make connections between the text and the picture because you know exactly how to control the stimuli.
Yeah, I mean that's where something like situational judgment tests or these sort of like narrative assessments may have the benefit over say a text image where a person gets to essentially make that up in their mind, right? They can tailor
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
that paragraph to themselves. But I mean, like, we are entering a world of AI generated images. We're already in a place where we don't know anything that's real. You go online and like everything looks real, but hell, who knows what the percentage is? But I mean, that opens up all sorts of possibilities for the sort of assessments you're talking about.
Exactly. By the way, have you seen Sora? So they just launched, the
No.
OpenAI just launched a new. a
Yeah.
text to video way of creating 1 minute videos, and it looks quite real. So it's really
Text to
difficult to
video.
tell
Correct.
text to video. Yeah, it's really
Holy
difficult
cow.
to tell the real from the fake. So it's really difficult now. So of course, yeah, that's a new frontier. So we can simply ignore it. But yeah,
Yeah.
it is what it is.
I think I have kind of like a countercultural take on that though. Um, it- so one of the things that I was so pleased about with the advent of generative AI and these, large language models and then the transformers behind them is that they were taking what was previously happening in kind of the digital world and finding real world applications for how that might make things better. And what I'm
Yeah,
fearing now with this introduction is they're just going the full digital route of like,
yeah,
you know how like every iPhone that gets released, the only thing that gets better really is the camera. And it's just so you can take better pictures so that you can be cool in the digital world, but not in reality.
that's true.
Like
Yeah,
they're going the route of like, well, we'll just create, you can create your own videos and your own, things that are happening off in the digital world. But I was like, well, what are the real world applications of this? And unless you're in the media or entertainment industry, I actually think that they're
exactly.
quite
Yeah, I was
limited.
going to say this.
Unless,
Yes,
unless all the, I mean, this was the whole criticism around Web3 when that was a big thing. Is like for Web3 to be successful, everybody has to decamp from the real world and say all of my life is now in the digital world, and that's how it's going to be. I don't know. I'm not thrilled and excited about that future.
no, I'm not either. So I think if you do this for marketing purpose, or if you are also working the gaming industry, I think when I first saw it, I saw, okay, that's good for a game because you can
Yeah.
try to replicate games. Games are not actually real life scenarios. So we can see that we're playing a game. So when you see, for example, as you call it, soccer, football, for example, when you see the game, so it's not the same as if you were in a stadium. But now with these real life images, at least you can have this feeling of being in a real life scenario, being really in a stadium. So I think it's just the only benefit, honestly, that I can see. So far, I haven't reflected much on this.
I'm starting to think that we're all bamboozled by this AI. Like I was told that it was going to take off, take all my mundane tasks and allow me to like paint and be creative. And like the first fucking thing it does is paint and be creative way better than I can do. Right?
Yeah.
Yep, I'm right there with you, Scott. Like
I
I
want to
think
be
it's
that guy. Why are you doing it, AI?
well, and it's about where people, because like these are not accidental decisions. These are conscious decisions that businesses are
Yeah.
making to where they focus their efforts. I really wish they would have focused more on the mundane tasks. Like that's where we need it. That's where humanity needs it. But it's like, oh no, let's just be better at creative tasks than any other human being that could ever exist. It's
Well,
like
it's
great.
probably the same reason that Apple focuses on building a better camera, right? That's what sells.
Yeah,
Yeah,
maybe.
but the thing
I
is,
don't know.
OpenAI, it's not, if I'm not mistaken, it's a non-profit organization. So at least Apple is a private company, so they can justify what they do. But
Yeah.
OpenAI AI isn't.
Yeah, now we're really wading into like the whole governance structure of OpenAI because that's a very controversial issue in itself. Um,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I'm curious, Igor. You have a fascinating background. You moved from Brazil to the UK. You're a professor at University of Hull, and you've created an online master's in people analytics there, which is a pretty rare thing. There's not many of these
Mhm.
programs out there. Um, like how why like what motivated you to do all of this and kind of because you're clearly on the bleeding edge of what's going on in terms of research assessments AI and the like why have you graduated from people analytics do you still love it like what's going on
So I think it's difficult to find someone who graduated from people analytics because it's still quite young field. But I usually tend to define people analytics as a kind of combination interdisciplinary approach that brings knowledge from different areas, for example, organizational psychology. And honestly, most of the things that we used to do in the past that people analytics now do, it used to be called organizational psychology. It would be under this umbrella, but
Yeah.
now we are calling this people analytics as well. But I understand people analytics as this interdisciplinary field that brings knowledge from organizational psychology, statistical models, other areas such as human resource management. Uh, yeah, pretty much anything that you can work on organizational settings could be related to people analytics, including AI and also machine learning models, among other things. But yeah, but you're right. So it's quite unusual. What happened? Just bring back a bit of background. So that just dates back to 2019 when I just took a post here at the University of Hull, and then I came up with this idea of having a new program in people analytics because I was trying to look around this region and I couldn't find any programs, anything on human resource management that would be related to people analytics. And the CIPD was already discussing these things as the Charter Institute here for Personal Development in the UK. They were already discussing all these things about people analytics, but there were no initiatives in this area. That's when I brought this idea to how I discussed to them, and I said, I'd like to create a new program that would be an on-campus program in people analytics. So the initial idea was not to have an online program. But then the pandemic hit into 2020, and it was quite funny because they were already discussing the possibility of having an online program instead of on campus. And that's when we decided all together just to move the program and say, okay, let's do it an online program and let's try to bring aspects from other fields and make a combination that could suit more smoothly into something which relates organizational psychology and organizational behaviors, human resource management practices, psychometrics, because one of the modules is also psychometrics, predictive modeling, and let's try to put them all together into a new program that would be a part-time program running for 2 years. And we'll be offering this across the board to any student that would like to take this around the board. So that's exactly one of the ideas, but things happen, I would say, a bit incidentally. So, of course, I had this idea, but the pandemic made a big decision. So that's exactly what happened to make the decision to create the program.
I think it's super forward thinking because people are going to need a combination of skills moving forward. You used to be able to be an HR generalist. You used to be able to just know research methods or just be stuck in your data science world. But I mean, we can talk about the advent of AI or generative AI, et cetera. But people are going to have to be more multi-skilled moving forward. And I think this program just really gives people a good leg up.
Yeah, so we have had very good feedback from the students. So everyone who leaves the program actually is the program with the highest satisfaction rate among all of the whole online programs. So we've got very good students as well coming from different parts of the world. So you, for example, interviewed Nico Lechet, who comes from NASDAQ. So we've been
Nicole's
we've been
fantastic.
working together on the project here. So she's also great in what she's doing. Yeah, but we've got very nice students. You're right, Scotty. So and yeah, that's pretty much what we're doing here.
Well, were you the one that introduced her to the psychometric network analysis work that she
That's
she
me.
talked about with us on the
Guilt
podcast?
as charged. Yes, guilt as charged. So yeah,
Nice.
one of the things, yeah, as I said, one of the modules is psychometrics. And what I try to do is always to bring innovation to the module. So we've got, of course, IT response theory has been around for quite a while now. But psychometric networks is a big new thing in the field of organizational psychology and in organizations. And then we introduced this to organizational psychology 2019. We start to work with some engagement research and data that was we collected it. We didn't collect actually, but we've gathered data on more than 1 million workers in Brazil. And then we analyzed this data set, use a machine learning approach. So all of these things about splitting the data into training and test data sets. So we did it. So as we could run these two models and compare the two psychological networks to check what variables are the most influential within the network, and also what characteristics would stand out as the most important ones. It turns out that engagement, so spoiler alert, so turns out that engagement comes up as the most important and relevant characteristic within the network. And it was a network of more than, I can remember, 50 or 60 items. Yeah, which is also not a complex complex thing in psychometric networks, because if having many nodes and many items, things start to get a bit difficult to estimate.
So, if engagement matters the most, do you remember what mattered the least?
That's a good question. I can remember. Yeah,
His lasso regression reduced that beta to nothing. It don't matter.
lots of
But
regret. Yeah,
I don't think people realize just the power of these causal attitude networks, the psychometric network analysis, as a tool for the future. You know, typically we're stuck with like mean, like okay, engagement of 4.5, and say like psychological safety of 4.42, which is better. Hard to say, but when you can actually identify the interconnectedness of the actual items and see their growth over time, you can generate hypotheses around what does your attitude network look like when you first enter the organization? What does it look like after 10 years in the organization? The structures look
yeah.
different because of all the knowledge that you have and the experiences, et cetera, and the things that mean different things to people at different stages of their career. And this gives you a perfect opportunity to develop interventions and actually attack issues in ways you couldn't in the past. It's really exciting stuff, and people don't realize it yet, but it's coming.
That's quite relevant what you said, Scott, because there are so many aspects related to that. For example, in the past, when we did organizational climate research, we usually tend to, honestly, still nowadays they do the same in a few companies, but they only present the bar plots with all
Yeah.
of these means. But let's imagine that, for example, we have benefits and people are not happy with the benefits provided by the company. But the thing is, how likely is benefit to influence all the variables within the network? So
Yes.
if benefits not something that is important, so why should we change or try to fine tune benefits? Perhaps there is something more important that will be much more influential within the system than, for example, benefits. And that's exactly what psychometric networks would provide with. And the other thing that you said is quite interesting is about dynamical systems. So psychometric networks can also model these dynamical systems. So we can understand, take a picture of the network now, understand the topology of the network, which would be the structure of the network. But after a while, after even 6 months, you can also collect the data again, use the same team, the same information, then you can also compare the results before and after. Because as you said, people are dynamic, so they won't necessarily show the same results.
Yeah, that dynamic flow or cascading nature of attitudes is really critical. So, like when you're first in an organization, your manager is super key, or the team around you, and that'll influence how you feel about the psychological safety. That'll influence how you feel about just like organizational support, all these sort of things. 10 years in, maybe you don't really care so much about what your manager thinks because you already know all the transactive memory of the organization, and that doesn't impact with the way you feel about the organization or the psychological safety that you have. These are things which is really, really powerful for attacking issues once again.
Yeah, even for organizational culture, perhaps the organizational culture has changed a few aspects because new people has arrived and they're bringing
Yeah.
new culture, new ideas, new innovation, and then you are not modeling exactly the same system. So that's why systems are quite dynamic, and that's important that you model this at different points in time.
Yeah. When I think about this, you used the example of benefits earlier. Is there a part of this when you're looking at this through a causal lens, right? That I think about like the two-factor theory of like hygiene and motivators, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
always saw that
aspect.
benefits
Yeah.
and things like that, these are just hygiene factors that have to be taken care of. But once you meet the factor, I always look at like kind of like a multiple hurdles model. Once you've gone over the hurdle, there's nothing else that you can do to kind of squeeze any more value out of it. Whereas it seems like the psychometric analysis is going to help once you get past the hygiene factors. Would that be a fair way of talking about it?
Yeah, I think so. I've never thought of this in this way because it looks like you're having. I mean, that's the internal and the external, which is the hygiene and motivational factors, as Hasberg call it.
Mm-hmm.
So they have two different layers. Of course, we can understand this as also a multi-level model, and you could compare that these hygiene factors are provided by the company, and that will
Mm-hmm.
be the third level, a macro level, that you need also to model. And then the second level, the third level, would be exactly either the team or the individual. So yeah,
Oh,
that could be
fascinating.
something like this. But in any case, you still have to, as you mentioned, a causal model. You still have to create an intervention for this model, so as you can prove
Mhm.
that the model, that the benefits will not be influenced by other variables, will not influence other variables. So it depends on whether you're putting them as a DV, a dependent variable, or independent variable. But causal models could be quite well applied for situations like this.
I think that's super apt. And say an organization is faced with like low engagement, and they just really have nothing, like, oh, we just got all our employees are disengaged, they don't want to work, this sort of thing. And like to Cole's point, like, what do you do? Like, we'll give them free lunch on Friday.
Yeah,
And it's like that could be a very periphery issue. Like, we don't give a shit about lunch on Friday. We care that the leadership is not transparent and doesn't work
exactly.
with us. That's the
D-
main issue, not free lunch.
don't listen to
Yeah,
Scott.
that's
I
true.
love a good free lunch on
Yeah, it's a
Friday.
bad example. Bad example.
Yeah.
We'll take all the free lunches we get. We love it. It's the center of the network,
Everyone loves it.
really.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, this is good stuff.
How the hell did you get from Brazil to England, man? Like, we get
Yeah.
these people on all the time, and like there was a time in my life when I wanted nothing more to live in another country, and I may be approaching that time again. I don't know, but how did you make your way from Brazil to England?
It was quite funny because it was not incidental, but in 2013, I took a sabbatical leave, a 1 year sabbatical leave. And in Brazil, you can also get a scholarship to study abroad. And then I took the sabbatical leave and I decided to go for a postdoctoral at the University of Cambridge in 2013. And then I spent 1 year at the University of Cambridge then. But due to visa restrictions, and I had to go back to Brazil because I had spent some time abroad on a scholarship, so we have also to pay your time back. And then when I moved back to Brazil, I started my life again. I started to adapt, try to adapt, but then I couldn't, honestly. And then in 2016, I was offered another position at Cambridge as a research associate, and then I decided to move for good. So I'm going to go back to Cambridge and start to work with the same group, pick up where I left off, and then move on with my life. So that was quite incidental. So I was not planning like you. So I'd like to live abroad or those things like this, but that happened, and then I decided to move based on these incidental
I
decisions. Yeah,
I got it. You got to be smart. I think that's what you just said. That's how it works.
Gotta go to Cambridge.
not quite, no.
Yeah. I was looking for some visa loopholes so that
But
Scott
there
could find
is
a way.
there is one. There is one call, but I'm not going to tell you.
Breaking news here.
But it's not Hull. No, it was not up Hull. But what happened was that it's quite funny this because after spending 9 months at Cambridge the second time when I came, then I had a kind of visa issue because I was not sure if my contract would be extended or not because working as a research associate here, you are not on a permanent contract, so you are on what they call fixed term contract. And then I was not sure if I would be having my visa renewed or not. And then if not, I would have to go back to Brazil. So I would be expelled. So what I decided to do was, okay, and I spoke with the guys at Cambridge at the time, and then I said, okay, please feel free to apply for a permanent position. And if you find a permanent position, you can just go. Yeah, and that's exactly what happens. And then I applied to another university called Lincoln, and then I moved to Hull. But when I got to Lincoln, I got a permanent position, and then I applied for a permanent visa, which is a tier 2 visa, and that's why when I decided to stay. But so there was a visa issue involved
Yeah.
at some point, but it was not actually a big issue.
Do you think that your movement around and kind of going between, university-based time and then working with industry-based companies has allowed you to kind of stay at that nexus point between those two? Because one of the things that we find is many academics, and I feel like this is one of those things that's actually increased over time, not decreased. Many academics are just solely focused on academia. Whereas like the academics that I like, and I believe Scott likes as well, are the ones that can play in both worlds, that embody that scientist practitioner model. And I really think that you embody that as well, Igor. How did you navigate that?
Yeah, so I've had some contact. So that let me just go back a few years. So I had a chance in the past to be with a few colleagues working as organizational psychologists, but not have any contact with industry. And for
Yeah.
me, that's the same as a doctor not having any experience going to a hospital and seeing patients, for example. So I think that's quite odd if you don't have contact with the industry and you're working in a business school. So and then well, that's exactly what happened. So of course I was trained to be a junior researcher, but at the same time, I have always this mindset that I have also to work with the industry. I have also to understand real life problems and try to see exactly how academia could tackle these challenges. And that's exactly when I start to have more contact. Ever since I have contact with lots of companies like Messe, Corny Ferry, have consulted for several companies around the world, and always trying to understand exactly what the problem is, always trying to model these problems and trying to come up with solutions that could help them out. So that's pretty much what I believe. But of course, that's not that's my view. I agree with you, Cole. I've got a few colleagues that they believe that you have to work on theoretical models and have to work on the more theoretical approach. You don't necessarily need to have a contact with the industry, but of course, I totally respect this, but it's not how I approach, organizational challenge. I believe that should be the other way around. We should try to understand the world and try to bring this to academia so as you can connect these two worlds.
Are you going to PsyOp this year?
To what? To what?
Society of Industrial Organizational Psychologists in
No,
Chicago.
the PSYOP. No. I've never been to a PSYOP. It looks
Really?
quite nice. Yeah, I've never been to the PSYOP. Yeah.
Oh, fascinating.
I usually go to the EURAN, yeah, which is a conference based here in the European Management or European Academy, but I've never been to the SIOP.
It's one of the few places where academics and practitioners can really get together in the industry,
I
right?
know.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of connective tissue across it, which is really unfortunate. Sort of things you're talking about there,
It really
where
makes it quite special. I mean, it is very rare. You have academic only conferences, practitioner
yeah,
only conferences, and like this is the
That's
one
brilliant.
point in when those two communities merge. And we just convinced our last guest, Andrew Pitts, to make the trip over from last podcast. Maybe can we go 2 for 2? Igor, do you want to come over? We'd love to hang out.
I'd love to. I'd love to. Yeah. So when will it take place?
It's in Chicago.
Is it Chicago? When?
it's in April.
In April. Okay. It's just 2 months away.
You don't have to take
Not
a
so.
calendar.
I'm not
maybe
so.
PsyOp 2025. We'll get a
Yeah.
session going or something
I'll
like that.
definitely, yeah, I'll definitely do it. Yeah.
Just gonna bring us full circle. I got this idea. I'd like to bounce off you. The idea of like merging, like say Gen AI and assessments into like a conversational assessment for employment testing. So as opposed to like a paper and pencil or obviously online assessment where someone like answers Likert scales, just a conversational talk to a computer like an interview, but it's scored in essentially real time and adaptive and all this sort of crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, can I
Yeah.
ask a question about that, Scott? Because I've thought about this before. Why can't it just use your chats that you had historically and come to the same conclusion rather than having to do a fully new assessment? Like, what's the value add? I mean, maybe there's constructs that you had never covered in your previous chats or something like that, but like what is the value add of, because one of the things you run into in the assessment space is people just don't want to take the time to take an assessment.
That's
And so
totally
is there
fair.
and so could you do something that like natively scrape the data to come to the same conclusion? And maybe I'd love to get your perspective on that too, Igor.
So like you're talking about like scraping like your Gmail information to like
No,
all
I'm saying like scraping your previous interactions with the
with
AI.
with the company.
Yeah, with the AI.
There's far fewer limitations if you're already talking about proprietary information from the organization, right?
Sure.
You're assuming that it's recorded too. All these sort of implications.
Yeah.
I'm curious to Igor's perspective on this.
Yeah, me
He's
too.
the AI psychometrician.
Yeah. I read a paper last year of someone who did it, but
Damn,
it
I
was
thought
a
I
kind
had
of
this
chatbot.
idea.
Yeah, exactly. It's always the same. Yeah. So I came
Cole
up
had
with
this
this brilliant
idea. This other
idea.
guy
So
had this idea.
So yeah, no, so she started to work on a chatbot, but to measure personality, and yeah, the final takeaway was that she could come up with the same reliability results. So if you use a psychometric test or a chatbot, you can have the same level of accuracy in terms of predictive modeling and also the same reliability. I don't know exactly the basics because I couldn't read exactly. You don't
Yeah.
have access
Yeah.
to the chatbot because it was that's another thing about working with industry. Sometimes you don't have access to the codes, but the codes were not provided because they are proprietary. So we couldn't have access to the codes to curate it. But she said that everything was pretty much the same as using a psychometric assessment. So that could be used in place of a psychometric assessment. Yeah, there's a company here that just contacted me that they want also to do something like this. They created the chatbot. It's very conversational, quite nice chatbot, and they start to ask a few questions about your occupation. So, what position would you like to apply for? And so, what are your interests? And they started with this conversation, and they approached me because what they want to do is to embed some kind of psychometric assessment, standardized assessment, so they could also collect standardized data. So not only having this
Yeah.
conversational approach. I think that's the trickiest part, Scotty, is how to standardize the results of these assessments. Because, of course, if I take this test, take this test, you want to compare the results. But how can we do this if you're only using GenAI? So I think we can come up with something very nicely, but how can you
Well,
compare
and
results?
you probably get to the answer of the emoji question from earlier of like what emojis are going to lead to what psychometric
just
constructs.
just give you a smiley
It's true.
face and just move on with life. You also have like the sticky issue of it's
Yeah.
a black box, right? I think that's the big hiring issue with assessments, right?
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
true.
Well, do
Yeah.
you want to do a confusion matrix segment, Scott?
Let's move on to the confusion matrix.
The confusion matrix.
Okay, you're in for a treat, Igor. We're gonna do a little research roulette. So the rules are
Okay.
simple. We have three research studies. One is real and two are fake, and your task is to identify the real one. If you do,
Oh.
Cole will make you a social media tile which you can share with your friends and family. And if you don't, he probably will anyway. So
High
that's the
five.
way it goes. Okay, the first research is from the University of Minnesota. It's titled "Swimming in Syrup as Easy as Water." Swimming in syrup is as easy as water. It's from the American Institute of
Like
Chemical.
maple syrup?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
American Institute of Chemical Engineers Journal, 2004. So we got swimming in
Okay.
syrup. Number two, running in sand versus pavement: the surprising science of speed. This is from MIT Journal of Experimental Sports Physics in 2001.
Sounds more convincing. Yeah.
And article number three, the aerodynamics of jumping in a jumpsuit versus naked, uncovering the naked truth. This is from Cal Berkeley, International Review of Human Movement Science, 2022. So you got swimming in syrup, running in sand, or aerodynamics of jumping in a jumpsuit versus naked.
Wow.
I'm
Just
gonna let
based on the
Igor go first.
titles. Yeah. Yeah. Are you sure, Cole? Can go
Yeah,
first.
you go for it, man.
I think the third one is not quite convincing. I'll say it's just, of course, swimming syrup is also something, yeah, a bit far-fetched, but
It's a lot of syrup.
aerodynamics, yeah. I'll go for the third one. Okay, third one.
You're going for the aerodynamics of jumping in a jumpsuit versus being naked.
Be
I
naked,
feel
yeah.
like I've heard about the second one before, and so I think that one's real. That's my guess.
Okay, so the running in sand versus
Yeah,
pavement. Both of you are fooled. It is the swimming in syrup is as easy as water.
Really?
So Edward
wow.
Kussler, whoever saw Michigan's Michael Hopkins 2004 experiment, the University of Michigan admitted that the bizarreness of the idea is the reason it received funding. So 16 people of varying swimming skills swam in a regular pool and a pool of sugar syrup, which is twice as thick as water, and the difference in their recorded times was negligible. And I did a little bit of additional research, and he said that the biggest issue that he faced was actually getting permission to fill a swimming pool full of syrup.
Yeah, imagine the drainage issues.
Or lack there. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Well,
It's
that's fascinating.
like having renters. I have renters in Austin right now, and they do some unimaginable shit to the house that you would never have believed.
You're gonna go back there and they're gonna fill the pool up with syrup. Ugh.
Like, how the hell did you break the refrigerator door off? Like, how does that happen? What would you do?
That to me, that sounds a little bit like divergent thinking. So
That's where you want to go? Okay.
that's where I want to go. Maybe we can do some nerdery.
The nerdery.
So I'll tee up the first article we've got on the Big Five and divergent thinking, a meta-analysis. So this was in the Journal of Personality and Individual Differences by a few researchers. And what they showed is that divergent thinking, which is a subset of just overall creativity, has a relationship both with extroversion and openness to experience from a Big Five perspective. However, the authors did note that this was a pretty weak relationship, whereas previously it's been postulated that the relationship might be a little stronger. However, the most interesting finding that I saw is that they mentioned that there's some moderating effects by different types of Big Five measures, age, culture, the year of the publication. And one of the things that they showed is that there's sort of a curvilinear relationship between divergent thinking and age, which showed that it was smaller when you were younger. It peaks between 30 and 34 years old and then diminishes in life after that. I would not have expected that. I would have expected early in life divergent thinking was at its highest point, and then it would just slowly decline throughout your life. But I don't know. This is a fascinating study. Did either of you have any reactions to this?
I did. I'll
Yeah.
let Igor go first here.
Yeah, no, I would say I was not expecting curvilinear actually, Carl. I think it will be the other way around because in terms of divergent thinking, so you're not like, let's put this way. So in terms of openness to experience and relationships that you have about trying to be critical about life and things like this, it's more likely that you do over your lifetime, but not at the beginning of your life. So I was expecting some kind of linear, not a curve, but just a line that will be just going over
Yeah,
and over.
I was expecting
Yeah.
the same for sure.
Yeah.
For me, this is in line with the other creativity research that we've seen. So what you're telling me is that people that are open and talk to a lot of people, they're more creative. So they go out, collect new ideas. They go talk to a bunch of people. They're able to connect dots that other people are not be able to. They're not able to connect. They're able to think about things in new ways. I mean, this is exactly the same as a bunch of articles we've covered here around bars and creativity. It's a place for people to gather and exchange ideas, and sit there and just perseverate. Brian,
And there's a bunch of 30 to 34-year-olds at a bar.
yeah, that's fair too. Like Brian Uzi and his study about Broadway plays and do they win Oscar awards? The Burt, I think it's 2020, whatever, around Doctor Who and the vacillation of cast, etc. I mean, this is right in line. It's like, but this is like a very individual level. So an individual person that goes out and collects these ideas is able to come up with new ideas. It's kind of like whenever someone says that they have writer's block, my first inclination is like, you need to go read some more. It's not that like you just like stuck on a page. It's like you don't have anything to say. You need to go out,
Correct.
collect some ideas, and think about this a whole lot more.
You need to read, listen to other people with ideas. You need to go
Yeah.
and have experiences for yourself, and it helps to go for a walk. Walks help.
As far as the curvilinear relationship, I mean, I could see it. I mean, that's the point in your life where you have gained if I want to continue my hypothesis here, that you've gained a lot of experiences. You're still talking to a bunch of people, and you're mentally sharp. I mean, you start declining around 40, what have you, and you stop talking to people. Right, your social network becomes much smaller at that point. Other than that, I have no thoughts.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah, there's
enough.
another interesting thing which is about extroversion. So just the relationship with extroversion. I thought it would not be necessarily related to extroversion, but introversion. I don't know exactly what the effect is. It's positive or negative. But
It was
I don't know
positive.
why extroversion. I think openness to experience is very, very likely to have an association with, but
I think
extroversion, why?
if I had to guess, that's just like it's two different factors. So like one, like the openness would be like your receptor is open, like your
Exactly, yeah.
synapse is open, and the extroversion is like the motivating factor. Like you're gonna
Mhm.
go collect information from other people. I suppose
Mhm.
like you could have high extroversion and low openness. That sounds like a terrible person to be around, but
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I don't know. You want to hit the next one about video versus in person and all that, Scott?
yeah, we can go there. The other one's actually quite similar to this
Okay,
one.
well, let's go to that one
Yeah,
first
let's go to
then.
that one first, just because it's along the same themes in my mind, at least connecting the dots here. So this is brokering the core and periphery creative success and collaboration networks in the film industry. So it explores the dynamics of creative success and networks. So it focuses on the Hungarian film industry from 1990 to 2009 and how collaborative networks influence creative awards.
Who's not familiar with the Hungarian film industry from
Yeah,
1990
wholesome.
through 2009?
Yeah, Igor, hit me with your top 3 Hungarian films.
Never.
What you got? So they introduced the concept of core and periphery. So the core is that tight knit group with privilege, etc., and on the probably prestige, and on the periphery is like the people that don't get engaged that much, but they kind of like out there sort of personalities. And the findings show that bridging from the core and engaging the periphery increases the probability of success. They also have this kind of intriguing gatekeeping index, so to quantify how much bridging takes place. But overall, it highlights the role of bridging and networks in the film industry.
What do they mean by gatekeeping? Just out of curiosity.
It's like an index of essentially just being able to go out and identify. It's an index
Okay.
of bridging.
Yeah. I think it's fascinating that if somebody was solely on the periphery or solely within the core, that they wouldn't have, I think of this, maybe this is the wrong frame of reference, but like the periphery folks are like the indie films, the core folks are like the big blockbusters.
Yeah.
And if you stayed in your lane, you would be more popular. But it's fascinating to see that when you're bridging those boundaries, that's when you see the biggest kind of hits that happen. And so that's really cool.
Yeah, you really need both, and like this really came up in the Burt article, Doctor Who. I think it's 2018, whatever it was. But the highest, if you have nothing but indie artists, you wind up with absolute trash, right? They have all these like wild, like avant-garde ideas, and people are like, they sit around like they're wine. They're like, yeah, that's
Bunch of divergent
insane,
thinking. Yeah.
insane. And on the
Diverse.
other end, you get I don't know, whatever the latest rom-com is, or like another like
Mm.
Transformer movie that is exactly the same as all the other ones, right? But you need both to come together.
I think what's
Michael Arena talks about this in his book Adaptive Space, essentially engaging the edge or something like that.
that's fast. That's exactly what I was thinking about. It's like if you've got to be covering enough new territory to make it interesting, but it has to have enough grounding in like things that most people like common experiences that they can share, that it's not just showing a video of a plastic bag spinning in the wind like they do in American Beauty. Like
American
that's a
Beauty.
little too
Yeah, yeah.
avant-garde. But it's like it's built within a shared kind of narrative that we have, and I love that. Like Michael talking about being on the edge. That's exactly where my mind was at. What do you
This,
think, Igor?
yeah.
I haven't read the paper, but it looks interesting. So it's kind of social network analysis. So I truly believe in what you're saying, but it seems that they really keep this bridge and they're good connectors. And perhaps the gatekeepers are always those who have access to more people, to have more, contacts, they have more power within the network. And that's why they're also able to make these connections between the peripheral and the central
I,
networks.
I think about this quite a bit, so I gravitate for these sort of studies. So I'm starting to connect my own dots and like seeing like a consistent theme in these sort of things, whether it's at the individual level, like this Big Five personality article we just covered is like just another piece of the puzzle, and this is just another one too. Like very similar results of this sort of like vacillation structure of going out, collecting ideas, and then bringing it back to the core and refining them. It's like you just see it over and over and over.
Yeah.
What's the worst
Yeah,
movie y'all
perhaps.
seen recently?
The worst movie we've seen recently?
Yeah.
Let me think. I usually just turn them off. So I do most of my movies via streaming. And if I can't make it past 5 minutes, we're done.
I mean, that's the beauty of like Netflix, right? They give you a bunch of movies, but they're all kind of trash,
Yeah. They're all like oatmeal, like they're just enough to get you by. Well, fair enough. Why don't we hit on the last one, Scott?
This hey Igor, hit us with a great Brazilian movie. Is there one out there?
I can't remember the last time that I watched a Brazilian movie. So, oh gosh, there's a good one. I don't know if they have any translation for that, but it's from the northeast of Brazil. But it was a long time ago. I can't remember. We're not very good at the industry of films. It's a shame. We've got the Argentinians are quite good at this, so they usually go to the Oscar, but not the Brazilians. It's a shame.
Oh, that is a shame.
Who's better at soccer, England or Brazil?
Ooh, controversy.
Controversy. No, I can't say that.
I've
got your passport. I can tell you.
We all know the answer, so we'll keep
exactly,
going forward.
Hard hitting questions here.
Yeah.
Okay, this is really intriguing. This is actually a really old study. I'm writing a book chapter on network analytics, and I was trying to hunt down this sort of research, and I can't believe that more people haven't done this. But being there versus seeing there, trust via video. So how long does it take to develop trust? Well, it may depend on the sort of medium that you're using. So these researchers got groups of folks to engage in these like prisoner dilemma sort of tasks where they were rewarded if they essentially cooperated, and they had them in 4 different conditions. So one was face to face, one was video only, one was video and audio. The other was audio only, so essentially telephone, and the final one was text only, so email based. And the findings show that face-to-face groups develop trust almost immediately, right? And the lagged effect was followed by video, audio, and then text. And it took about 15 interactions via video to engender the same amount of trust as one face-to-face interaction. It took about 26 audio or phone call interactions to develop the same amount of trust as face-to-face. And for text, the answer is go fuck yourself, because it never developed as high as the level of trust of one face-to-face interaction.
Wow.
Just don't do text is what I get.
Well, I mean, I get that, man. Like, I get people that, lob stuff over the fence at me, just via text. You're like, hey, no way, man.
What this does from my perspective is it brings about the justification, which we all knew before the pandemic, but then like it became like this like political football, which is sometimes you got to get together in person to build trust. And so having these offsites that maybe have, once a year or once, every like 2 quarters or something like that makes a lot of sense, because you can establish trust so much more quickly. And then there's the whole video versus on versus video off on like Zoom meetings. And I actually have a question for you both. Like, in my mind, because I'm a video on guy, and I think it's because I want to get to that trust quicker. And I think we all just kind of know this. When you get into a video call and then the other person just will not go on video, but you're on video, doesn't that feel like the most like passive aggressive thing that a person can do? Yeah.
Totally cool. I totally agree with you. So I feel uncomfortable, and what I usually do is also to switch off my camera. So it should be a two-way street. So if you're not showing yourself, I'm not gonna do the same. So I'm stop broadcasting myself. So no, not gonna do it all. I agree with you. Yeah, but that also brings back, I think it puts in perspective a few things in terms of remote working, and I agree with you. So I think companies should meet at least, every quarter or 6 months or so that we
Yeah.
can build trust.
Yeah.
And also, it's different. It's just I'm 100% in favor of remote work, but every now and then I think we should get together and to have some lunch, discuss a few things. Just it's
Yeah, I
much
mean, like,
better the way
build that trust, and then you can, like, maintain it through other
and
forms of
maintain.
meeting
Yeah,
them should you need to.
Just
yeah.
imagine if you had like a new person start on your team and they only communicated to you via text the entire relationship. Like, first of all, how would you know they weren't in AI?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nowadays. But second of all, like, would you ever feel like they were a real human being? I don't think human beings are capable of that, really.
I mean, is this the Gen Z world we're, like, entering, right?
Maybe,
Don't they
maybe.
just only back to
No, they're gonna have
emojis only? You
the
give a
Gen Z is gonna have text to video because Sona just came out, so it's not gonna be an issue anymore.
or just get your, headset on, your Apple Oculus or whatever it's called, and
Yeah, dive right into the metaverse.
but I think as far as this goes, though, everyone seems to find their link that agrees with them for return to office. Some people like find links as like, oh yeah, because I want to be in the office. Other people find the link that says that remote work is the best thing on earth because of X, Y, and Z. But this is done before the pandemic. This is way before the pandemic. And granted, it needs to be done again because
Yeah.
the technology is just enhanced since then.
Well, that's actually, I mean, I think I told you this before the podcast, Scott. Like, that's why I trusted it more, is because it wasn't, you knew that since it was before the pandemic, that there wasn't like some secret motivation behind the researchers to skew the results one way or another to fit whatever narrative they're trying to talk about. And so I actually think that makes it more trustworthy, not less. My only concern was that if it was too long ago, the video applications were just terrible back then.
Oh yeah.
Right. And so if like we're talking about like old, what was that, like go to meeting? Do you remember go to meeting? Like I think this was a precursor to like WebEx. Like those video quality was terrible.
I had a camera. Oh my! I could go on a different story, but we'll just say I had to use an old camera to do a job interview in like 2016, and it was like so you stop, it's like there's like lag, like 1 frame per second, this sort of thing, so distorting.
For sure.
Or
Yeah.
could use Skype. Yeah. Do you remember Skype?
Oh yeah.
I think Skype is now what Microsoft Teams is, right? Like I think that's what because they got bought by Microsoft at one point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, but who
That's why it
knows? I
doesn't
mean,
work.
that was so long ago. Does it really matter at a certain point, right? But
Cole,
Igor, this is what?
Cole says you're a guitar guy, right?
Yeah, I play the guitar every now and then as well. Yeah, but I'm good at singing, much better at singing than playing the guitar. I usually play the guitar just to follow my singing, but yeah, so yeah, I'm kind of musician, not professional musician, but yeah, I try. In the past, I would go for a few gigs in Brazil,
Really?
do some, yeah, but just not professionally speaking.
Do
So
you,
it's just, yeah.
do you like
Well, since you wouldn't answer the soccer question, who's better at guitar, Brazilians or people in England?
I think they have different styles.
Different styles. Do they have more
Yeah.
soul?
I think he is more rock based, whereas Brazil is much more, I don't know, MPB and samba based. So it's just a different way of playing the guitar.
Mhm.
So it's more melodic in Brazil. Here, I think it's a bit harder. But it depends because if it also goes back to the post punk era, like The Cure
Post-punk.
and
Now we're talking my language.
yeah, yeah, The Smith is among the bands. You can see also very nice melodic rock. So, and I love this part, the spirit of
are you a
England.
fan of Sepultura?
How do you know Sepultura? Yes, yeah, but Sepultura
Yeah.
is not melodic rock. Sepultura is metal
It's-
rock.
yeah, absolutely.
We're
It's
going
heavy
to the deep
metal.
cuts today.
Everyone Google Sepultura Roots. The song is called Roots, and scare your
Roots,
children.
exactly. Roots, buddy, roots.
All right. Well, I
Oh
think
wow,
I think
Scott,
we
He
you
nailed
surprised me
it.
now.
He nailed it. Yeah.
I think we've officially exhausted the formal part of the podcast. So, Igor, it's been fantastic having you on as a guest today. Scott, any final words for Igor?
Igor, you're a psychometrician. Rate us on a scale from 1 to brilliant.
That's more than brilliant.
Oh, I love
there
it.
you go.
More than thumbs up.
Yeah.
We got
It's
ceiling
2
effects.
thumbs up. 2
Two
thumbs
thumbs up.
emoji.
Yeah.
We'll
Let's see
take
if
it.
it does anything. Yeah. Good. Yeah.
All
There
right.
we go.
There you go. Well, Igor, this has been awesome. You've been listening to Directionally Correct, People Analytics podcast with Colin Scott and Igor Menezes. Thanks for joining us, Igor.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Hey guys, Directionally Correct is dedicated to you, our listeners, to help educate and entertain you on how to effectively do people analytics. By supporting this podcast, you are helping us continue to provide valuable insights and knowledge to our listeners. Please consider becoming a patron of the podcast. You can find the link to sign up in the show notes or at patron.podbean.com/directionallycorrect. Thanks for your support.